Hi, everyone, and welcome to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with WendyKLaidlaw. Wendy has spent the last 2 years helping women with various stages of endometriosis to heal naturally after putting her condition into remission. After her own healing success from stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis, she's inspired to heal others, and her goal is to help some of the 175 million women know that there is another way other than painkillers, drugs, or surgery. This is the place to be for real talk with real people for real results, so you can learn how to heal your endometriosis naturally. Please note that the opinions expressed in this program may represent options, but are not a substitute for proper medical care. Before starting any new healthcare program, we recommend you consult with a health professional.
Hey everyone, it's WendyKLaidlaw here from Heal Endometriosis Naturally, and as always, I hope that this podcast finds you well. Now, this week we have the wonderful Troy McTeer from South Africa. He is, believe it or not, one of the world's leading experts in mind as a mindset master, and he works with the ultra high performance people of the world who are intense producers and helps them with their mental and emotional prowess. And I just love that word prowess. And we're going to hear a little bit more about what that means in a minute. But welcome, Troy. It's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm very excited to be with you today and have a fun conversation.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we've kind of worked together in another capacity, and I heard your story and I thought, you know what, it's so inspiring that I felt it was really important for everyone to hear your story, especially if they're involved in the medical field or mental or emotional realms, and they're having sort of challenges and struggles. And I think sometimes we can get ourselves into ruts and, you know, be told by other people what we should be thinking and doing. And actually, you're the great example of how you can kind of break away from that and just, you know, step up into superstardom, if you like, of what you're doing now. So perhaps before we hear about what you're doing right now, you could give me a little bit of background of Troy as a little boy. What was it like for you growing up, and what were your earlier influences?
Okay, yeah, let me. Troy's little boy. Goes way back and brings up some emotions, both positive and negative. So I was brought up in a very loving, caring family in South Africa, and we moved to Namibia, which is just above South Africa in Africa. When I was about 8 years old, and throughout my childhood, I'd always been pushing boundaries. I'd always tested and seen how far I could go. I didn't like to conform. I didn't like to be told what to do. I questioned authority at home and at school, which got me into a lot of trouble on the sports field too. And for some reason, I never really fitted into this school paradigm. I didn't understand why I had to do certain things a certain way, and listen to people blindly without having a dialogue and questioning what was actually going on, and then figuring out the best way to do things. Instead, I was taught, and we all are, I suppose, just listen to what's going on, or to the teacher. Here's a textbook, study it, and repeat it back onto a paper to see that you're a good learner, but not a thinker. And I enjoyed thinking, and I enjoyed understanding my own mind from a very young age. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I just enjoyed thinking. And I got to a point where I was probably about 15 or 16 years old when this whole facade that I was putting on got to a point where it led me into the world of trying alcohol, trying marijuana. And then by 15, 16 years old, I was doing cocaine. I didn't do it for long, but I tried it probably for about 6 months when I decided to stop, because the friendship circle was getting quite intense and they got found out, and I just sort of pulled out completely and focused on school, and to ensure that I could get the results to get into a good university and make sure I could study a good degree. As society had told me, as school had told me, my guidance counselor told me, and my parents had told me, even though I had no idea what I wanted to do. So my first sort of act of rebellion was this trying of drugs from a very young age, and that was sort of my childhood. Coupled with that, though, it was I had a mother who was very controlling, and narcissistic tendencies in a way which I didn't actually understand until later in life. And there was always this massive thing of approval, like I had to prove myself to her, and she put a lot of pressure onto myself and the rest of the kids. There was 4 of us, so I had 2 sisters and a brother, and she was doing it from a good place, a very loving place, wanting the best for us. She carried trauma from when she was a child, and never really dealt with that. And when she had children, this trauma played out in our own lives, where she had very high standards for what we were meant to achieve. And if we didn't, or if I didn't, I'll speak for myself, if I didn't meet those standards and expectations, there was a problem. Now, she was doing the best that she could with the resource that she had available. I don't blame that narcissistic control element whatsoever. And at the same time, I've got those same control issues that I need to deal with now, which is this conditioning that we all get from our parents. And it's not about blaming your parents. It's about blaming them for the good and the bad. So, and that's responsibility, personal responsibility. As a child, though, I didn't know what I was doing. And I was having this response of, don't tell me what to do. Who are you? This pressure of having to get the correct results. And if I didn't get those results, there was trouble. There were consequences. And I lived in fear and this state of seeking approval when I was young. And that led me to experiment with drugs at an early age. I was experiencing my own trauma, but there's absolutely no, and I think people need to understand this. We all have trauma from parents, but your parents are not responsible for the way you are now. You are responsible for the way you have to take responsibility and change that. So my journey right now is what I'm doing is understanding this control that I have in my own life and releasing that. And at the same time, having the love and gratitude for my mother, because without her, without that expectations and the approval and the control, I wouldn't be the man that I am today, with the responsibility and now living completely in truth and knowing that lies don't get me anywhere and they slow stuff down. So the truth has sped up my life in a beautiful way, and that's the thing with truth.
Well, I think from what I'm hearing is that you recognize there was ways of doing things that didn't work necessarily well for you. You prefer things to be different, but now as an adult, you recognize, what the root causes of certain ways of behavior and addictions and things like that. But now you also know the power and control that you have over yourself and the things that you can do.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true.
But I'm curious about if you could go back and speak to, so when you talked about your rebellion, which I always think is an interesting sign, because it's natural. If someone is trying to control you and conform you, but you have that spirit, you clearly had a lot of spirit that you didn't want to have contained. At the same time, I'm really hearing how you wanted the approval. So there must have been a lot of conflict internally going on inside you. No wonder that you ended up seeking something to numb you, because it would have been all that internal emotional conflict. But if you could go back and speak to little Troy now, what would you say to him? Like when you first started to rebel?
To little Troy, when I had started to experiment, or when I was,
or just at the youngest age when you became aware? I mean, because can you even put an age on it? Like that youngest age?
No, I've got no idea. Like I can't put an age on. But what I would say is that the number one thing I would tell him is to take responsibility. No, massive personal responsibility for everything in your life. Obviously, as a child, you don't really know what that is. But if I could understand what that was, that is what I would tell him, and that's the pillar of everything that I do with myself, my life, and my work, is taking massive personal responsibility for everything in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, every single thing.
Because you said at the very beginning, you felt a lot of emotion, good and bad. So when you're recalling that, is, what's coming up for you?
Well, the emotion that I experienced as a child was, the good was this very enjoyable, playful childhood with my family, or my brothers and sisters, and my friends. The negative emotions that I felt were massive fear to perform to a certain level that was expected of me, and this immense anger that would build up when I was afraid. So I would experience rage on sports fields. So the fear and rage would go together, and it was scary at times for myself when I was on a sports field at 13, 14 years old, getting a red card and not understanding what had triggered me, and I was questioning the authority of the referee. So those two emotions stand out for me the most from my childhood.
And it's really interesting that you have that awareness. I mean, not many people have awareness at all of the origins of, the triggers of their emotions. But I get a sense that you quite early on kind of had this awareness, even though you felt powerless. Would you say that kind of was?
Wendy, I think looking back at it now, I can see that I had the awareness then. I used to ensure that I would not upset my mother on weekends. When I was a child, I would go up and I would wake up early, and I'll go and clean the house to make sure that she'd wake up and not get into one of her controlling sort of fits, and because I hated that. So I was very aware as a young child. So that's actually interesting. That's actually one of the first times that I became aware and actually did something about it to make sure that this pattern didn't repeat itself.
Well, you were evicting action on something that you thought you could control to try and prevent. In your earliest. So it's really interesting, that initiative, if you like, that awareness at a young age.
Yes, and what you just said there is so interesting, because about the control. I think we all have some type of control issues in our lives, and when you give up, or when you try and control everything in your life externally,
well, I think the lesson
doesn't work.
But the lesson is, isn't it? I feel on my journey is learning what we can control and what we're powerless over, because we're powerless over other people, places, and things. But we are all powerful over ourselves. And that tends to be, as we're growing up, we think that we can try to control and influence people and things around us because we don't know any different. But of course, then it leads to dysfunctional behavior, addictive behavior. It leads to all those things because we're miserable inside, trying desperately to please, keep happy, influence in a positive way the people around us.
Yes. And when I learned that there's only a couple of things that you can actually control, you said it, ourselves. The things we can control are our beliefs, our thoughts, and our actions. Those are the things that we can control. And those are all internal. When you get to be aware of your actual belief structure, your belief system, and you understand that you can adjust that. And your thoughts, you get to be aware of your thoughts, understand that you are not your thoughts, and you get to change them as and when they come and pop in. And your actions, you get to decide how you act in every situation. And that's all we can do. There's no point trying to control the external. And I did that for much of my life. And now I've still got little parts of my life. I still do that now.
None of us are perfect.
No.
We're work in progress. We're whips. but even it's when you talked about the fear element, and also when you were talking about you cleaning the house for your mom and so that she'd be happy. And, I can almost feel the relief that you would have had at that age if she woke up and she was happy to see what you'd have done, and then from that you would think, okay, that's what I can control, that's what's going to make her happy. And then you can see how these tandems all kind of get set up, these structures, these beliefs, these stories that we tell ourselves based on the information you know, and the actions around.
Exactly. I mean, that's just a trauma response, right?
Yeah.
And trauma doesn't have to be something serious like abuse or rape or, molestation. It can be the slightest thing of your father coming home and not greeting you, and you feel dismissed or abandoned, and he's just had a busy day and he's just maybe lost, like some big deal, but your mind, your young mind, goes on a massive search for meaning, and the human mind would rather know why, to ensure that you are safe and understand what's actually going on, than to not know why, or to just let it go as a young child, and then that trauma response gets played out in patterns later on in life. So you need to be very aware of what's actually happening, and yeah, my trauma response played out massively throughout the rest of my life until, well, not massively, but throughout the rest of my life, and living unaware. It just keeps on repeating. You're keeping the same lessons, the same hardships, the same problems, the same challenges over and over again until you actually take responsibility for that. You are creating this somehow, somewhere, who knows? But the only empowering attitude to take is, yes, I've created this, right? And if I created this, I can change this. And
but
that's empowering.
People don't often realize, and they end up in this victim mentality. I mean, I know I was there, and it's like, why me? Why is this happening to me? And then I'd get this really angry, frustrated part of me going like, stuff this, I can do something different. But I loved what you said just a couple of minutes ago about then you search for the meaning, because I think that's really supportive and comforting to the challenges that obviously that you face. You were trying to search for the meaning, and that by itself is profound. You've probably read Viktor Frankl's book Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychologist, caught up in the concentration camps during the Second World War, and he became obsessed, and I use the word obsessed, and analyzing what kept some men alive and what kept them, some men just gave up. And I think that's it. You obviously from a young age, I'm hearing that you had this spirit, this light, this ignite in you that, right, okay, there's some reason for all this, there's some meaning behind all this, because that's what gives it the depth and the clarity.
Yeah, I didn't understand what the point of life was when I was young. When I was about 16 or 17 years old, I remember speaking to my parents saying, like, so I go to school, then I go to university, then I find a girlfriend, then I get married, then I have 2 kids, then I get some dogs, then I get a house with a white picket fence, then I make some money in a good job, or I get this great job, and I climb the ladder, and then I maybe go on an overseas holiday once a year, if I'm lucky, and then I die. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty much life. I was like, that is not for me. So from that, when that landed for me, I was like, what is the point? Like, is everyone just doing that? And then I started looking around at the world, and everyone is not everyone, but the world and the society and systems is run and set up to condition us to be stuck in a state of mediocrity, honestly. And that mediocrity and the conformity of what people say you should do, or how you should do it, or where you should work, or how you should invest money, or who you should be with, or what school you should go to, or send your kids to, that conformity causes mental illness, because you're actually not living in alignment with yourself. You are literally just living a life that is for other people the whole time. And people wonder why they don't know, why they are disconnected, why suicide rates the highest they've been, why depression is the highest it has ever been, why addiction and alcoholism is the highest it's ever been. Yes, what's happened the last year and a half, 2 years, whatever. Yes, but before that, same thing. Conformity is driving this, because no one knows who they are, and they haven't actually asked questions, not through any fault of their own, but because this is how society is set up. Listen, take instruction, and follow out, and continue doing that.
I think that's fascinating what you just said there. Conformity causes mental illness. And I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know with the women I work with, my audience is women with endometriosis who are learning and inspiring them to take back power and control of their own body. But equally, they're being told to go down this medical machine route, which is, you know, the conformity route. They're not even told that there are any other options, or told that that's the only option. And then they end up sicker, more frightened, more scared, mistreated. It's horrible side effects I wouldn't even begin to share, make your toes curl. And they're pushed down this conformity tunnel. And is it any wonder that, you know, as I say, I just did a testimonial success story of one of my students yesterday, and she said she was depressed and she was suicidal and she was morose and she had given up hope, you know, but she'd put all of her energy and hope into the medical field, you know. So it's interesting that you say that, because we are all conditioned the same. And I think what it sounds like at age 16, 17 to be asking, is this it? It's phenomenal to be that bold and outspoken, which, you know, I love about you anyway, and that age to kind of go, heck, is this it? I don't want that. And I know myself growing up, I always felt different. You know, I always felt like asking why, but why? I joke that I popped out my mum's womb going, but why, questioning everything, and like, just shut up, just be quiet, just, you know. So it's interesting, at 16, 17 years old, you had that spirit in you, you know. So what happened after that kind of age? Because obviously you're getting a bit older now, and, you know, you've experimented, you kind of wanted to get into uni, you pulled back, which again takes quite a lot of courage to separate from a group that were doing cocaine. A lot of insight, a lot of internal strength to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. For me, it was just that's what I had to do, and just going back to what you said about the conformity, is that, and people listening to the medical industry and you know, continuing with what they've been told, is that we are taught from a very young age to outsource our thinking. And so we're told that a doctor knows best. Doctor doesn't know best about your body. When you ask questions and you research and you find different ways, that's when you start to open up into your own intelligence, your own knowing. And that's what I went into when I went into sort of university. I was like, what is my own knowing? Okay, cool. I went into university and I did a degree that I was going to do because it was going to, you know, get me into a good company. It was an accounting degree, chartered accountancy, and, you know, it was a great degree to have, and, you know, status, and, you know, you would make a lot of money and you'd be safe and secure, which is not one of the things I really
shrivel up and die bored.
Exactly. And I was at university, and a friend of mine invited me to play a poker game, and I went and I played a poker game, and I won it, had no idea what poker was. I started researching online, and I played some tables online and read some books and things. The next thing you know, I was playing online and I was making decent money. Had to go to work after university, and in this difficult degree of high status and big money, found out what these guys were earning, and I was like, no, I'm not interested in this. I would have waited 5 years to be earning that, and that's and I've worked this hard for that, and I was making the amount of money I was going to be making in 5 years' time playing poker part-time online. So I thought, well, I'm going to resign. So I resigned after 6 months, to the dismay of my family and friends, and I was an outlier, an outcast, an anomaly for someone who was in this career path. You know, poker players generally were gamers, or they, you know, were, you know, just started gambling very young and just sort of went into this. They were very, very smart people, and they just learned how to make money quickly. I was in this career that was going to set me up for life, and it was absolute illusion that I found out. So poker took me out. This was my second part of me, like rebelling now. So I rebelled against what was expected of me. And yeah, I went to Europe to play poker for a year, and went back to Cape Town. But I played for 6 years for a living. It was an incredible time. It was sometimes very stressful. But in that, throughout that this whole journey, I've always had this mild state of depression, dysthymia, not knowing what to do, not conforming, but at the same time, it was like a rebellion. It wasn't my own, like, it wasn't from purity. It was like, you guys, I'm doing this.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, kind of like that. You saying that you're always in this, and I completely relate to that, where, you know, you're kind of like, stuff you, you know, you're telling me what to do, but I feel this rebellion, this natural rebellion. I don't know what it is I want to do, but I just know it's not that. You know, there was just this kind of like, you know, conflict going on. So tell me more about the, you know, after the poker, you went into a estate agency, real estate agency, you still got this mild, you're saying mild state of depression, which again is completely natural. Depression is, in my view, you're not connected to your source. You're not connected to who you really are. It's anger turned inward. You know, you're trying to suppress all these feelings. You don't even know what these feelings are, because if you went there, you might get drowned in them.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the next stage of your journey.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that I was not able to sit with myself. I had to be doing something all the time, and poker was a very lovely thing to do, because you would play poker for 8 to 12 hours straight, and you're always with people and you're always talking. So there was no time to sit and think and actually experience these emotions. So yeah, I came back from Europe in 2011, end of 2010, and I went to Cape Town. Actually didn't get into real estate yet, but I enjoyed a year of just absolute debauchery in Cape Town. This is where I started to pick up a bit more of the partying and alcohol and the cocaine. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun, but I was searching as well. I was looking for approval again, the same pattern, looking for approval from people outside of me, you know, spending money, doing things that I didn't want to actually do subconsciously, but doing it anyway to gain approval of new friends, of women. You know, I've still got some great, beautiful friends from that time in my life who are now lifelong friends. But we're all in the same position. We're all looking for approval. We look back at it now like, yeah, you know, we were in pain. We were in massive. If you're doing cocaine, you're in pain. I don't care who you are. Doesn't matter who you are. You're doing cocaine. You are in some emotional pain that you're not dealing with. Yeah. So at the end of that year, I was like, I need to get out of Cape Town. Cape Town's bad, not me. So I left for a job in Johannesburg, and in real estate, commercial industrial real estate, which was a fun job. Got to meet people, enjoyed it, but I did well, but it wasn't something. It didn't light me up. It was fun, but it was also just a facade. It was a lot of people trying to, you know, show. There was a lot of ego. And I was in that state as well, but it was intense, and a lot of partying, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and networking and seeing people. So enjoyed it. It was a good time of my life, but in that time, I was slowly getting more and more and more depressed. I didn't know why, and the more depressed I got, the more I would drink and do cocaine, and it was a recreational thing. So it was never at work and doing cocaine. It was more like a party thing, but that's still a problem. You know, some people say, oh, it's just on weekends. It's still a problem because you're numbing, and it was escaping. It was avoiding actually facing the facts of what was happening in my life. And again, doing property because I thought that's what would get me, a lot of money, and didn't realize the destruction it was causing me. Thank God I had a girlfriend at that time. I started dating her in 2012, and she would sort of mirror to me. She was very self-aware and a very caring, gentle, kind, loving person, and she would sort of mirror and say, Troy, this is going on, this is going on. But yeah, that was then until I actually ended up putting myself into a treatment center. And that's where the whole story sort of moves into that medical understanding, meds and all that. But yeah, that was the next phase.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting hearing you say, obviously everybody always skims over their stories, and there's obviously a lot more going on behind the scenes, but that whole searching thing, I think probably so many people can relate to that, searching and getting more and more depressed, because of course what we now know is that searching externally and outward is the illusion. it's like the mirage in the desert. Actually, we need to come inward to really, as you say, you couldn't do with poker. You couldn't sit still with poker for 10, 12 hours. You're constantly on the go. And, it's that doing rather than being. And the more that you can come inward to actually listen to yourself, that's where all the answers to everything that we seek. So, interesting, you talked about anyone who's taking cocaine is pain, but of course that's just an addictive substance like alcoholism or shopping or eating, or any kind of addiction is a form of numbing, whether it's gaming or whatever it is. It's to numb out the pain inside.
Yeah, so I've got an interesting stance with this addiction thing. So I've obviously went into NA. I put myself into a treatment center for depression and suicide because I got to a point where I was now suicidal as well. But the addiction industry, or NAAA, they keep people victims. Everyone goes in there and they say, "Hi, I'm Troy. I'm an addict." No, you're not. You're not. You're not even. Literally, you aren't your job title. You aren't a husband. You aren't a wife. You aren't a child. You are you. And by putting labels onto people, they start to actualize those beliefs. They become a belief. So there definitely are addictions, but they are symptoms.
I was just going to say they're symptoms of a deeper problem. I went to Codependency Anonymous, because I was aware that it's exactly the same setup as the AA, and I got to a point where I'm like, okay, right, well, I recognize that's an element, that's a symptom that's showing, but it's not who I am. All elements of me. So what next? And it's like, no, they wanted to keep you kind of in that. I mean, I think there's a time and a place for both of these things. I'm going to say that for those listening and who've used it. I think it serves a point, it serves a place. It really helps to come together with other people who are perhaps suffering or being in pain, whatever, and you are able to kind of have mirrored back to you by hearing other people. That can be very profound and very powerful. But I agree with you, it's kind of, that's not the be all and end all and the end place. It should be just a catalyst for change, a catalyst for connection, in my opinion.
Exactly. I mean, I'm very grateful to them because I needed them at that point. But after, and that connection, as you say. But the reason that people go back to treatment centers for depression and for addiction over and over and over again is because those systems are not set up to deal with what's actually causing that symptom. They're just putting plasters and band-aids on those symptoms. And that is the work that I did on myself, was figuring out, okay, well, I want to stop this. Okay. And as people come back here, I mean, there were guys in the treatment center being back 10 times. I'm like, well, why you come back? And I asked them the whole time. Like, I don't know, this, then let's do this. There's absolutely no awareness of what's going on. So I figured that out, and everyone says the root cause, but it's so profound when you understand what the root cause is of that trauma or that pain that's actually happening. And when you integrate it, and you understand that it's not good or bad. It's just an event, an experience in your life, and you get to give it the meaning. You get to give it the meaning. No one else does. And whatever meaning you give it, that's what's going to, if it's a negative meaning or a bad or a good meaning, that's what your life is going to show you in the external. So one side,
well, it's recognizing it's not your fault what happened to you, but what if it happened for you? And now you have the choice as you're getting older to recognize, have the awareness to say, this is what really shaped me, fed my stories and my beliefs and my emotions about myself. But I was always in conflict with what was projected onto me because it wasn't who I am. Now I have the choice. Now I have the power in which to really look at these things and separate, cut the cobwebs, cut the ties, separate from those things. But I think people have to go back to identify it, not to blame or to shame, but more just to have that recognition of the roots to the certain behavior, because it's like cutting a weed. You can cut the top of a weed off, but it still keeps growing back unless you pull it out by the roots.
Exactly what you said about blame and shame. There's absolutely no point blaming or shaming anyone, because then you're giving your power away. You're saying that person did something and you then have to change them when you take, and it's very hard to change other people. It's very easy to change
when you're
yourself.
little and you take on certain ways of thinking, as you've even described your own childhood, it's so sweet that you were like at a young age going, I'll do this for mom to keep her happy. That's all that you knew with the information that you had at the time, you know, and it wasn't your fault that your mom was the way that she was, you know, and, you know, I always say to my women, we're never here to blame anyone's parents. This is something I say repeatedly. We don't know their history. We don't know what's come down through the generations. And sometimes that's an explanation. It's not a justification equally for their behavior, because there's some bad people out there that do bad things, and we're not justifying their behavior. What we are saying here together is, once you recognize that, and you said it earlier about trauma, it can be different things for different people. It can be a small t trauma, large t trauma. What is a trauma for you might not be a trauma for me, but it's identifying what these things are and recognizing, you know, our power to recognize it wasn't our fault. We didn't choose that, but now we can choose how we continue to move forward, whether we choose to carry it with us. And we're not saying it's easy either, is it? Because once you recognize the root causes of things, you know, it's probably pretty embedded in a number of different ways in your life. And this is where just by awareness alone, I think, is half the battle, because then you can start to sort of see all these different elements that you have control over.
Yeah, I think what you said is really profound with the awareness, is that there's 3 steps you need to create any sort of transformation in life. And the first step is awareness. Yeah. The second step is acceptance. And the third step is then you get to change it. Yeah. But without awareness and acceptance, you don't get to change anything. And yes, these things may have happened to you, or people have happened for you, whatever it is, but something happened in your life, and you get to respond to it. You can either be a victim of the situation, which is a massive problem in the world, and has been for hundreds of years. People are in the state of victim consciousness, and when you get out of it, you say, okay, cool, what's happened to me? Fine. You know, and whatever that is. I mean, there's some terrible things happen to people, and there was this. I'm not sure who it was or what it was, but there were twins. They were brothers, and they had an alcoholic father who used to abuse them. And the one brother was the successful entrepreneur making millions of dollars, and the other brother was a drug addict in jail. You know, and they interviewed, how's your life ended up like this? Yeah. And they gave the same answer. How could it not having a father like that? So they chose separate meanings and created their own reality of what life should be. The one guy said, I'm going to use this as fuel and change it and end this trauma. And the other brother was like, well, I'm a victim, and my father was like this, so I'm just going to get, you know, drunk and do cocaine or meth or whatever he was doing, and end up in jail. So it's situations are up to you.
It is fascinating, because I understand the little nuances. I understand the little shifts, the little thin elements that can really shift someone's life trajectory and perception of themselves and the life around them. You know, I think some people, again, a lot of women that I work with, feel they come in feeling a victim to the system or the medical field, and they feel completely trapped and there's no way out, but yet something drew them to me. So there was that little flicker of light that said, I have to do something different. And again, a lot of women carry a lot of shame. They feel that it's their fault. They've been projected upon, and they don't even know that until they start doing all the tools, the journaling, the self-awareness, the meditation, things like that. And they really start to increase their awareness and go, heck no, I'm going to hand that big box of manure back to whoever gave it to me, and recognize, like, you know, I'm not going to take on a shame and blame of other people, because I think that's it too. Sometimes people can internalize what's been projected, because when you're little, you don't have a choice. But that story of the twins is fascinating, because I know all the way along my story, and my upbringing was pretty unpleasant on so many levels. I was always like, this is for a greater purpose. This is for a greater purpose. I don't know why, and I don't know what yet, but I know it's for a greater purpose. And that's what I'm always trying to share with my women, is whatever's happening to them right now is probably happening for them. It's a training for their greater purpose. So even like with the twins you talk about, somebody said, I'm going to use this to break this pattern. I'm going to say, stuff you. And the other person, sadly, whatever was given to one whatever was taken by one wasn't taken by the other. It feels so sad because everybody has that potential. And that's why you do what you do, isn't it? Really helping to pluck and pull out. It's what I do as well. Pluck out these beautiful jewels and diamonds out of people that are there, given the right environment. They'll come up and they'll shine and they'll blossom and they'll flourish. But sometimes people don't even know that they have that capacity.
I think the thing that we all get to do is when a challenging experience shows up in our life, we actually get to be grateful for it and say thank you. It reframes it completely.
Even when you're really angry, going, I'm so thankful for this right now. I don't know what the heck is happening to me or why it's happening, but you know what? I can't wait to see what good's going to come from this. That's always
exactly.
That's always my
I mean, we don't grow without challenges. Imagine your life was so easy and you I don't know, everything was just simple, straightforward. Your relationships were brilliant, your career was brilliant, your health was brilliant, your financial situation was brilliant. I mean, what are you going to do? Sit on the beach in San Tropez the whole day? Or like there has to be next up levels and up levels and up levels in your business, in your career. There has to be a challenge. There has to be some sort of loss, or there has to be something for you to grow. So when those challenges come, go, oh, cool, it's time for me to grow.
What is this goodness to me? Yeah, exactly. Thank you for it. Well, it's like a lump of coal. Diamond is just a lump of coal that's had thousands of years of pressure put upon it. In fact, I heard another great story about a farmer out in America way back when they used to build, these wagons with their old wagon wheels. They used to take the trees that had been exposed, not in a forest, but wild open plain. That tree, they take that tree that's been exposed to all the elements and whatever, not shielded from the elements by other trees, and that was the tree that they would use for the wheels because it was the strongest. And it's the same kind of analogy, isn't it? But I think we have to be very careful what's coming into our world, coming into our narrative, coming into our thinking. I mean, you said it earlier about we outsource our thinking, but we don't even know that that's what's happening. But it can show up though when we're feeling depressed. It can show up when we're feeling illness and we're feeling sickness. Disease is dis-ease, so we do know. It's just that there's that fear. So it's how to master and harness that fear and see it for what it is parts of you wanting to challenge conformity and challenge the thinking that's currently there that is different. I remember feeling terrified when I'm like, I'm not going to have a 7th surgery. You're not going to rip out all my internal organs. I was literally told I was crazy and that I was a hypochondriac and I was making it all up. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. My whole life I dreamt as a little girl of growing up and being bedridden for 3.5 years. That was my dream for myself. Not. So that's where this, recognizing what we do have power over and how we can influence that we might recognize that, but not to feel ashamed by it, especially if there's roots there, but not to do the blaming game either, because that doesn't help. But just to start, I talk about the awareness, getting information, education, inspiration, and leads to empowerment, AIEIE. Because once you wake up and you're aware, you can never switch off again. And there might be times, I think we talked about this before, like sometimes like, oh, was it easier when I wasn't aware? No, because I was searching and I was depressed and I was ill. So it can be a challenging journey, but at least we're alive and alert and awake and aware.
You want to be aware. You want to make sure you know what's going on with everything inside of you and outside of you. Once you're aware and you understand how these beliefs and how these thoughts and how these actions and feelings and emotions work in your body, you empower yourself. I mean, there's so many different stories of people that have healed themselves miraculously. It's not miraculously, it's just that we've been conditioned that we can't do these things. You heal women's endometriosis naturally, without the medical industry, which has only been around since 1895, 1900, the allopathic way.
We talked about symptoms where they're just symptom suppressing and making more symptoms. Exactly. So it's nothing like weird, wacky, or woo-woo.
It happens.
What the body does, you cut your finger, it heals. You fall over off a bike and graze your knee, it heals. You stick your finger in the fire, it's going to be sore, but it's going to heal, But
exactly.
It's like you were told the same, though. You were told that you would be on medication, didn't you, when you were in the treatment center for life?
Yeah, I was in the treatment center for 3 weeks, and they got me off illegal drugs and put me onto legal drugs. Well, they didn't get me off. I got myself off. I just had to stop doing it. It was a decision that I made before I went. It was done. It was finished.
Yeah.
And they gave me the drugs for depression and severe anxiety disorder. So although they didn't even explain to me what it was. I mean, depression is just a number of symptoms that they group together into one so that they can prescribe medication. Depression doesn't actually exist as its own. There's a bunch of symptoms that you have to piece together, and if you hit those ones, then you're depressed, right? So it's very difficult to actually diagnose, although the diagnosis the way that the diagnosis system is set up needs to change as well. Yeah. But they diagnosed me with depression and the severe anxiety disorder and fed me drugs. I was on I think 3 different SSRIs. I was on 3 different anti-anxiety pills, sleeping tablets. I can't even remember the names of them because it's just so foreign to me now. There was one that really got to me, a thing called Dopaquel, I remember, and it literally changes the chemicals in your brain synthetically, right? And for me, it's completely absurd. We're going to look back in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, like we look at lobotomies now, going, how the hell did they prescribe people these drugs to people and to alter their chemical balance in their brains and numbed me out. It numbed me out more than any other drug or alcohol that I did. It numbed me out completely. I literally couldn't feel anything. And when they told me I'd be on drugs, I would have to be on drugs my whole life. There was no other option. I would have to be on these drugs my entire life in order to live a normal life because I was so depressed and anxious. I started to research and I was like, okay, what is going on here? I left the treatment center, started to research about mental illness and depression, anxiety. They called me bipolar, which is they diagnosed me with bipolar 2, which is, I mean, everyone's bipolar. We all get happy and sad sometimes.
Of course. But I think there's more than just 2 emotions. I have an emotional kaleidoscope. There's like over 108 different emotional states you can have.
Exactly. So I started to research and I started to understand my brain and how it worked and the neurochemistry and neuroscience within my brain and my nervous system. And I literally made a decision that this was absolute bull and that I could get off these meds. I was not going to be a victim to these meds. I was going to take responsibility again for my own mental health. Yeah. And within 10 months of this knowing and understanding and learning and researching and actually taking the steps to change what was going on in my mind and my body, and starting to actually have a vision for my future and actually find meaning in simple things, eating a meal, like enjoying it, and being very present, or, having a shower, actually sitting there and feeling what I was feeling under the water, or going for a walk and looking at flowers, or looking literally, that's all I had to do. Lovely. Get really, really present and understand what's going on. And in 10 months, or not all I had to do, let's put the caveat there, but that was a big part of it. Yeah. And within 10 months, I was completely off all the medication. My psychiatrist, who never looked at my brain, by the way, before she diagnosed me. I think I asked him to look at my brain before they did, but I was prescribed medication before they even looked at my brain. And 10 months I was done, and she couldn't believe it. She's like, this is not normal. I was like, yeah, well, it's not normal because people believe what you say, and you cannot be give them the hope that they can get off these, not telling that they are now a victim to medication their entire lives.
Well, that's the same with endometriosis. Endometriosis now is, they always have this thing, incurable endometriosis. So I'm going to start a campaign saying, please remove incurable, because again, all the media and the medical side put this in front of the condition. It's absolutely, I mean, you tell people that, then they can't help but become a victim of what they feel stuck in, because they're not in it, or they're not being told, or they're not aware, which is why I so admire the women that are going, heal endometriosis naturally. There must be another way. So well done you for researching, because it's what you describe as healing. It is so healing, and it's so simple. And as humans, we like to complicate things so much. We think it must be some big fandangle complicated thing. It's not. It's quite simple, but it does take discipline. It does take focus. It does take awareness. It does take like daily habits and rituals for yourself, so that you can keep awake and you can keep aware. Because once you've got there, you don't go, right, that's it. You know, you have to keep up these practices daily.
Exactly, but it takes the decision to know that you are going to elevate, or me, I'll talk about me, that I was going to elevate myself out of mediocrity. To me, taking pills is mediocrity. And when I was doing that, I didn't feel empowered. So it's about making that, taking that choice, or making that choice, and then sticking with that decision, no matter how difficult it is. And that's the same as in everything in life. Like I look at my life in every single moment of the day. Where am I being mediocre? Am I being mediocre in my relationship? Am I being mediocre the way that I speak to my wife? Am I being mediocre in the way I talk to myself? Am I being mediocre in how I'm showing up for a client? And I just remove it all completely. And then you sort of can move into this place of brilliance, or understanding your own mental and emotional well-being, and then empowering yourself to create or build a life that you actually want, without listening to the rubbish that we get told about, like out of Mondays. People hate Mondays. There's mediocrity. You're like, oh no, I'm just going to sit on the couch the whole weekend, or and watch Netflix. Mediocrity. Mediocrity is everywhere. It's insidious. You don't even know it's coming up. We're hypnotized by it. And I still am too, but you got to work at it every single day. Where does it show up in your life in the micro? And when you identify it, you can remove those pieces and step into actually empowering yourself in any way. So healing endometriosis naturally, but don't outsource your thinking. Don't listen to someone else. No one knows your health better than you. And yes, I understand we've been conditioned to believe that doctors know best. And yes, sometimes they do. And at the same time, when someone tells you need medication your entire life, or something's incurable, that's false. It's not true.
Absolutely. Now, I love that you're saying that. And I didn't prime you to say that before we had this conversation. And I'm glad that you're saying it, because it is so true, and it's so scary. And I think, equally, we are both advocates of being around like-minded people. So when you're in the mediocrity, you tend to be just kind of like this sponge absorbing, like being mindful of what you're reading in the newspapers, what are you listening on the radio, what are you listening to TV. I literally don't listen to any news or anything anymore. I get my news secondhand from my children, because it's so triggering and stuff to me. But exactly, it's recognizing what we're told all the time, and being very mindful of what comes into our space, so that you can go and smell the flowers, so that you can be very mindful, so you can get clear with your own thinking about where you're headed. And of course, as I said a couple of seconds ago, being surrounded by like-minded people who are questioning and challenging themselves and conformity and mediocrity all the time as well.
Yeah, and look, we live in a thought-based reality. Okay, all you're actually seeing is your perceived reality. Yeah. So you get to decide what's actually happening, and what that means is we are living in illusion. Albert Einstein even said that reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Yeah. Okay, and
it blows your mind when it is so true, but it does blow your mind when that's first presented to you. You think, really, I can change this? And I think, but equally, people seek change and fear change in equal measure. And I think this is where awareness is so important. It's a nice, gentle look at, without blame, without shame, really looking at. And for my women, I always recommend journaling in the morning as you wake up, because that's when you're still in slightly alpha state of the brain. You're not fully awake. You haven't put the mask on yet. You haven't sort of, slipped into that robotic thinking or just numbing. You can just start to listen and notice what is making you feel sad or irritated or triggered or whatever. And that by itself can just help increase the awareness.
100%. I think that's key. Just to take 20 minutes, half an hour for yourself every single morning before you start your day. And I mean, this is written everywhere, and it's on every single mental health app that you can find. And it's so key. And you'll find that the most successful people do this, whatever if it's meditation, if it's exercise, if it's just sitting or going for a walk, whatever it is. There's no phone, there's no straight into emails, there's no straight into calls. It's let me just take 20 minutes for myself, or 10 minutes, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that just gets you back into a place where you can actually be resourceful and resilient to make decisions that you need to make during the day, to have to make the best choices throughout your day.
Yeah. And so when you're working with clients, what maybe you can a quick share of your impacts that you've had on the clients that you've worked with.
Yeah, well, so my clients, so clients that I work with are these ultra high performing individuals that are consumed with intense pressure in any industry, and generally they are these anomalies. So I work with these anomalies, and they're these outliers, they're these free thinkers, and they've been outcasts most of their life, or are seen to be crazy or mad, whatever it is. And they then start to suffer from insidious mental health issues that they don't even know. They don't even, or they do know after a while because it gets bad. And they start to numb as well. They start to escape, be it overworking, be it over exercising, or the insidious ones like drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever people, shopping, food, right? And it's for me, it's so interesting because I did this myself, and it's just literally an illusion that we create because it's a thought-based reality. It's a perceived reality. So when you illuminate the illusion of what's actually going on in someone's life, the results are rapid and immediate. And there's steps that you take to keep that change, because people who can change things like this, and like how long does that last for? And this is the key. So my whole thing is we need rapid change out of the mental health pain that they're in, the depression, so they can see clearly, so no fog and there's clarity. And then from there, there's certain steps we take for the lasting change, and from that space they can start to create and build a life that they actually want. So I've had amazing results. Guys and women who are suicidal, guys who are on meds, who are now not on meds after 2 weeks, 3 weeks of just, and it's not actually rocket science. It's just, hey, what do you actually like? You've been living a lie, right? You like what you're doing. Do you like that meal? Do you like bananas, or do you just eat bananas because you've been told to like bananas? And it's about questioning the whole time. So they question. They get their own answers, build up sovereign thought, which is very, very rare. Help them take massive personal responsibility, and then be so blatantly truthful with themselves, no matter what, and no matter what the consequences are, or what happens after that. But you have to be honest with yourself. I spent my entire life lying. Up until I was 32 years old. I'm 36 years old now. And because I was trying to get approval, and everyone is, and these guys are the same thing, and they try and conform as well. So they actually dumb down their vision to fit in with people around them, because they feel like their vision is too big, or they shouldn't explain, how well they've done in business, or how well their relationship's going. We all do it. Think about it. You'll see a friend of yours that's, going through a tough time in a relationship, or maybe, a great time, and you're going through a tough time, they go through a bad, and you won't tell the truth about what's going on. And in a relationship, I don't know why I went there, but, or in business, or in your health, when you're honest with yourself, you speed up time, and when you actually know nothing is true, everything becomes possible. And that's the illusory thing that we were talking about earlier. So I help my clients tangible results, but the most fun results are these results of them understanding they can create their own thoughts, and then them understanding how powerful they are and how confident they are. And we all are, with the same nervous system. And the fun part is seeing clients resourceful, in a state of peace, no matter what's going on in these high, intense pressure systems that they operate in, just being so unflappable and cool and calm and presentable and resourceful, and nothing affects them. From that place, you step into this realm of mental and emotional prowess, which is what I give my clients. This is what the outcome is when I work with them. And there's mental health and there's mental prowess. Yeah. Mental health is well, it leads. It's also got this sort of tinge of like mediocrity to it. It's just health. Where prowess, and it's also like you've got to be healthy. You can't be upset or anxious or depressed. But when you've got mental prowess, you can experience those feelings or those thoughts, and you know how to respond to them. And that's where the prowess comes in. So no one's perfect. You're going to experience anxious or anxiety. You're going to experience a bit of sadness or depression maybe in your life. How do you respond to it? And that's the most fun part, is seeing someone in a state of mental and emotional prowess.
And that's why you're one of the world's leading experts and mastermind coach.
Yeah.
Not
definitely.
Coach, master. A master. So as we're finishing up here, I kind of want to bring you back. I love the work that you do, and I think it's really aligned with what I do with my women and things as well. So it's beautiful, the work and the impact that you're having, helping them. That the prowess is such a poetic word anyway, to help people have that awareness and really recognize, the influence that they can have over themselves. And we're not talking about being in denial either. We're talking about really increasing our awareness. But I want to take you back and kind of bring this round here, because you've mentioned like meaning. When you were little, you were trying to make sense and find the meaning in everything. And now when you think you're helping, again, people find meaning in what they do, and now you really have meaning behind what you do. What does that feel like for you when you kind of, like, that whole circle, if you like, has come all the way around, that everything that you went through was leading you to this point?
Yeah, I feel very grateful. I know people say grateful a lot, but when you understand the depth of what gratitude can actually bring you, and the understanding of what I had been through in my life, to get to a point where I actually enjoy waking up, and I'm not living for Friday. I should live for Friday, right? Understand how I impact people's lives and see their lives change.
So your life was happening for you for the future. That was the meaning behind everything. Exactly.
So, and this is one thing that a previous mentor of mine said. He said, "You'll never know if any situation or experience is good or bad until the end of your life on your deathbed." Yeah. Because look at everything that you think is bad today. In 2 years' time is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to you. That's why all these negative things that have happened to me were the most beautiful things that have happened. I'm so glad I went through, the addiction thing or
the depression.
Yeah, the depression, because I understood what is happening in the mind, and I understand the mind so well. So yeah, I've got meaning, and the meanings come through my own pain and trauma, and thank God I had that, because otherwise I would just be a zombie.
Do this work. You couldn't be the world's leading mindset master if you didn't have had that experience, because people will know immediately if somebody gets them, if somebody really understands their pain, because it's invariably somebody who's been through that same pain.
Exactly. It's the experience that creates the results that you can get rapidly. And just going back to the meaning, like, it's so important to understand that everything has meaning in life, and you either give it meaning, or something or someone gives you the meaning for it. Then you're disempowered. So you get to take the control of that meaning. So there is another place where you can actually have a bit of control in your life. Is the meaning that you give to things. We are meaning making machines. So make sure that you choose the correct meaning.
And it's turning it back inwards as to what is our meaning, rather than, again, what was that phrase that you use? Outsourcing our thinking to other people. So what is the number one thing that this life of yours so far has taught you?
The number one thing that's taught me, number one thing I've taught, and I've said it, I think, a few times, is that the only thing you need to do, and every single person needs to do in this world, is take massive personal responsibility for themselves. And actually experience your individuality. Life has taught me that without personal responsibility, you are just a victim to your circumstances.
Yeah.
And that is my most, is what I live by every single day.
Yeah. Well, that is incredibly powerful way to end this. But how can people get more information about you?
Thanks, Wendy. Yeah, so you can get hold of me at my email address, hi@troymcteer.com, or on LinkedIn at Troy McTeer, or on Instagram at Troy McTeer.
Website for construction right now, isn't it? Troy
websites, yeah. It should be hopefully the next month and a half.
Gorgeous and sparkling and shining when it's all done.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they can learn more about you and reach out to you there. Well, look, thank you so much for coming on. What would be your parting words to women with endometriosis who are listening? Firstly, I always think I admire them for stepping out of the medical machine box and even opening up their mind. But what would be your last inspiring words to them as they're listening?
First of all, thank you for listening to me. And I would say that understand and know that nothing external that the medical industry tries to force onto you ultimately is, or let me say it this way, that you have the power to heal yourself, right? And that nothing external is going to get you there faster or help you out. You got to think for yourself and understand and learn what's going to heal you the best. And you do have the power. Once you take responsibility for yourself and your health, you can change things rapidly. I mean, there's thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that have healed themselves from cancers and everything. So
yeah, fantastic.
I hope that was good.
No, that was great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And it's marvelous the work that you're doing. And in our own little way, we're all trying to help heal the world of their pains and misery and sadness. But it's been awesome the work that you're doing, Troy. So thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks for listening to Heal Endometriosis Naturally with WendyKLaidlaw. And I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and rate us. If you're interested in learning more, you can download your top 5 jumpstart tips at healendometriosisnaturally.com and jump on the VIP email list. Remember to keep you number one. The world needs a healthy you.